I'm 20 years old now, and this happened back when I was 16. I've gone back and forth on whether I even wanted to tell this story. 4 years isn't all that long, but it feels like I've lived two completely different lives, one before this and one after. There are still parts of that week I can't remember clearly. Maybe that's because I was drugged for a lot of it. Maybe it's just my brain trying to protect itself. At this point, I honestly don't even know. What I do know is that I made a decision that seemed completely harmless, and it changed my life forever. When I was 16, some of the older kids from my school were talking online about a party they were going to. I wasn't really friends with any of them, but I knew a few people who'd been invited. I convinced myself that if I went too, maybe people would finally see me as someone who wasn't just another awkward girl. It was summer break, so I didn't have to worry about school the next morning. My parents thought I was staying at a friend's house. I remember being way more excited than I was nervous. At the time, I felt like this night would launch me into a new social stratosphere. The party was exactly what you'd expect. Loud music, way too many people packed into a single house, alcohol everywhere. I walked through the door and immediately thought I'd made the right decision because nobody questioned why I was there. Everyone was just hanging out, having a good time. For the first little while, I actually had a good time myself. That's when I met a guy who introduced himself as Jason. I'd never seen him before. He looked a little older than everyone else. Later, he told me he was 24. At 16, I didn't think about it the way I do now. Jason was friendly, easy to talk to. He showed me around the house, including the kitchen where the alcohol was. He even helped me pour myself a drink because I admitted I didn't know what I was doing. While he was mixing vodka and cranberry juice, he asked me how old I was. When I said 16, he smiled and said I looked older. At the time, it felt like a compliment. After we'd been talking for a while, I needed to use the bathroom. I still had my drink in my hand and didn't want to carry it, so I asked him to hold it for a minute. Again, at 16, I clearly didn't know what I was doing. He said sure, and when I returned, he handed it right back. I finished it pretty quickly. He immediately offered to make me another one. I accepted without thinking. For the next bit, 10, 15, 30 minutes, everything seemed normal. But then, all at once, I felt sick. The room started spinning. My legs felt weak. I couldn't focus on the conversations around me. I remember thinking, did I get drunk off one drink? But now I don't think I was drunk at all. Jason, who had been talking to a few people nearby, seemed to notice immediately. He told me I probably just needed some fresh air and suggested we step outside. At that point, I wasn't thinking clearly enough to question anything. So, I followed him. And after that point, my memories are incredibly scattered. I remember being outside. I remember getting into a car and trying to stay awake through the drive. But from that point on, everything goes blank. Nothing but darkness and fragments. When I opened my eyes again, I was lying in a bed. At first, I thought I was home. I stared at the ceiling, trying to figure out why I felt so strange. But then I looked around the room, and I realized I had never been in this room before. I sat up, and that's when I noticed I wasn't even wearing my own clothes. Someone had changed me into this odd, matching pajama set. I looked around the bed, on the floor, and I couldn't find my clothes at all. They were just gone. I remember sitting there, staring at myself, because none of this made sense. But before I could process it, the bedroom door flung open. In walked Jason, carrying breakfast, coffee and toaster waffles on a tray. He acted as if there was nothing amiss. That was the moment I realized something was very seriously wrong. This wasn't me crashing at someone's house after a party. I had no idea where I was, and it was feeling more and more like I couldn't leave. I'm not going to describe every single thing that happened over the time I was with Jason, partly because a lot of it is hard to remember. And what I do remember, I don't really want to go into. But all the days blurred together. Every morning, he'd bring me breakfast. He'd pick out what I was to wear. He watched everything I did. There was never any privacy. He kept giving me drinks throughout the day. And after a while, I realized they were doing something to me. Days blurred together in that house. I lost track of time completely. Every morning, the same routine. Breakfast brought to me, clothes picked out for me, drinks that made me feel happy and carefree, even when I knew I should be terrified. That was the cruelest part. The drugs made me feel okay. I was apprehensive and worried for most of the time, but after meals, I would feel happy, nearly carefree, energized. It was clear to me that he was spiking everything he was feeding me. It was a trap disguised as kindness, a cage dressed up like a home. I did what I could to stop eating or drinking, but even when I was thinking clearly, I felt trapped. I had no idea where I was. I couldn't tell if anyone was looking for me, and I didn't know whether I was ever going to see my family again. Every day felt like a year. He watched everything I did. There was never any privacy. The bathroom door had no lock. The bedroom door didn't close all the way. He was always there, always watching, always present. I felt like an animal in a cage, something to be observed and controlled. I tried to memorize details, the color of the walls, the layout of the house, any sound from outside, anything that might help me figure out where I was, but it was all useless. The windows were covered. The doors were always locked, and he never left me alone long enough to do anything. Sometimes he would talk to me, normal conversations, like we were friends, like I was there by choice. Those moments were the most confusing. The cognitive dissonance was overwhelming. One part of me wanted to believe him. The other part knew the truth. I wondered if my parents were looking for me. I wondered if anyone at the party had noticed I was gone. I wondered if anyone even cared. Those thoughts were the hardest to push away. The idea that I had been forgotten, that I had disappeared without anyone realizing. I still don't know how long I was there. A week? Longer? The days all ran together. I'd sleep, I'd wake, I'd eat whatever he gave me, and then I'd drift away again. It was like being underwater. Everything was muffled and slow and unreal. And then, one day, everything changed. He just told me we were leaving. No explanation, no warning. He led me outside, put something over my head so I couldn't see where we were going, and he drove for what felt like a long time. I was terrified. Was he taking me somewhere worse? Eventually, the car stopped. He told me to get out. I did as I was told. A few seconds later, I heard the car drive off. By the time I managed to uncover my head, he was gone. I was standing somewhere on a road I'd never been to before. No phone, no purse, not even my own clothes. I didn't know where I was. I didn't know how to get home, but I was free. I just started walking, one foot in front of the other. I didn't know how long I walked for. The sun was up. Then it was down. Then up again. I kept walking. Eventually, I became so exhausted that I couldn't keep going. I collapsed on the side of the road. I didn't care anymore. I just lay there, waiting for something to happen. For someone to find me. For the nightmare to finally end. Thankfully, someone driving by saw me. They called 911. The ambulance took me to the hospital. The police met me there. Since I'd already been reported missing, it didn't take them long to figure out who I was. The next thing I remember is seeing my parents walk into the hospital room. I've never been so relieved to see anybody in my life. My mum was crying. My dad looked like he hadn't slept in days. They held me and told me it was over, that I was safe now. I wanted to believe them, but I knew it wasn't over. It would never be over. The investigation lasted a long time. Police interviewed people from the party. Jason wasn't his real name. The phone number was a burner that was no longer in use. Nobody knew where Jason lived. Nobody knew anything beyond that night. As far as I know, authorities never found him. He's still out there, maybe still doing this, but I don't know why he let me go. An experience like this doesn't just end when you're physically safe again. It follows you. It changes how you see and move through the world. For a long time afterward, I felt like I had lost any sense of independence. Even simple things, going out with friends, being in crowded places, started to feel unsafe. It's like your idea of what's normal gets rewritten. Instead of feeling like the world is open to you, It starts to feel like something you have to constantly be on guard against. That's the part nobody tells you about. The fear doesn't go away, it just changes shape. I also had to come to terms with the fact that I made choices that put me in that situation. I went somewhere I didn't really know. I trusted someone I had no reason to trust. I ignored the small instincts that were trying to tell me something wasn't right. That's hard to admit. Part of moving forward has been accepting that those missteps mattered without letting them define me. I had to learn that real independence isn't about doing whatever everyone else is doing. It's about knowing when to protect yourself, even if it feels uncomfortable in the moment. That night at the party, I went because I wanted to seem older and cooler. Years later, I understand that the cost of that decision wasn't just what happened that night. It was a long process of learning how to feel safe in my own life again, something I still struggle with today. About 6 months ago, at Dulles Airport, my body reacted to a stranger with such intense fear that I still think about it regularly. My husband and I had flown from the West Coast to the East Coast on a red-eye. We landed early in the morning, exhausted and delirious in that weird post-overnight flight way. We took our luggage upstairs to departures because the pickup situation downstairs was chaotic. It was cold outside, and the morning sun had just started to peek over the buildings. Fresh air after hours in airports and on a plane felt amazing. We leaned against the concrete barriers outside the terminal while my husband called his mum. That's when a man came over. At first, there was absolutely nothing strange about him. He looked like a completely normal late 20s to early 30s tech bro. Clean clothes, fleece vest, AirPods in, well-groomed, albeit with slightly dirty nails. Honestly, if I had seen him anywhere else, I wouldn't have thought twice. Once he was near us, he told my husband he liked his jacket. My husband thanked him. Then the man complimented mine too. It caught me off guard, so I awkwardly said something like, "Thanks, man." "I like yours too." He smiled and sarcastically replied, "I'm sure you do." Something about his tone felt slightly off. We made small talk. He asked where we were headed. We said we were staying with family nearby. He started talking about family too, except every comment he made had this bitter, self-deprecating edge. At one point he said, "Friends and family don't matter. Anyway, we tried being nice, just casual conversation with a stranger." But then something changed. I cannot explain this properly without sounding insane myself, but the atmosphere shifted so suddenly that I think I physically felt it. I got chills all over my body. This wasn't anxiety or nervousness, it was a level of primal fear. The stranger's expression had changed completely. He was still talking normally, but the way he was looking at us suddenly felt deeply wrong. The only way I can describe it is that he looked at us as if he wanted to hurt us. There was intense anger behind his eyes that absolutely had not been there before. I noticed the guy had no luggage at all, just a backpack, which struck me as odd since he'd mentioned getting off a long flight. Then he casually dropped, "I don't have a home." Every instinct in my body was screaming that something was very wrong. My husband usually gets absorbed in conversations and doesn't pick up on weird vibes immediately. But I knew I needed to get away without escalating anything. So I quietly walked back inside the airport, leaving my husband outside talking to him. I made up an excuse about going to the bathroom. He just said, "Oh, the bathroom, huh?" Once I got downstairs, I called my husband and told him as calmly as I could, "You need to come inside right now." Something's seriously wrong with that guy. While I was on the phone, I could hear the man say, "Oh, is that your friend? Tell him to come back out." My husband wrapped up the conversation politely. The guy responded in this cold, almost mocking voice. "Yeah, I'm sure you really mean that." Hearing it made my stomach drop. A minute later, my husband came back inside. The second I saw him walk around the corner, I felt relief wash over me. Before I could explain myself properly, he immediately said, "No, I get it. That dude was really fucking scary." That was the moment I knew I wasn't imagining it. We waited inside until his mum arrived. The entire time driving out, I had adrenaline pumping. Nothing had technically happened. He never threatened us. He never followed us. He never raised his voice. And yet I have never felt a stronger instinctual fear response in my life. Alright guys, this happened just last night, and right now I'm still trying to make sense of it. I live in a really small town in Mexico, and power outages where we are aren't exactly rare. Whenever the electricity goes out, there's usually not much to do besides wait it out and hope it comes back soon. Last night, no different. I was in my room playing dispatch when the lights suddenly flickered and then went out. I figured at that point my night was over, so I put everything away and took myself to bed. At the time, nothing about this felt unusual. We lose power a few times a month. While I was getting ready for bed, my mum was still upstairs. She likes sitting in one of the hammocks we have outside. It's much cooler than being inside, especially when the power's out. She was talking to someone on the phone while she relaxed. I told her and our band of puppies good night and went downstairs to my room. Our puppies usually like spending time with my mom, but when it gets late, they know their bedtime. As a group, they find their way to their own room and go to bed. I guess at some point during my mum's phone call, the person she was talking to asked her a question, one that seemed innocuous at the time. I know it was a man she was talking to, and he asked her if she was alone. For whatever reason, she answered yes. My mum was indeed not alone. Both me and my sister were in the house, and our 4 dogs that range in age between 4 months and 3 years. I don't know why she answered that way. Eventually, my mum came downstairs, washed the dishes, and got ready for bed. All of us sleep in the same room at night. The other rooms are being used for storage or kennels for the dogs. I'm not a baby myself, but sleeping in the same room makes me feel safer. Last night, that was far from the case. Sometime around 1 or 1:30 in the morning, I woke up to the sounds of knocking. At first, I wasn't even sure if I was awake or dreaming it. But then I heard the knock again. A slow knock, followed by a set of whistles. Before I could sit up, my mum quietly whispered, "Don't move." Her tone was serious. Not loud, not exactly panicked, but there was a seriousness behind what she said. It was the way she said it that made me realize something wasn't right. I'm guessing she heard the knocks and whistles too, and coupled with her warning, it was enough to make me freeze. My bed is one of those spring beds that creaks and squeaks even if you move just an inch. Normally it's just annoying, but that night I became painfully aware of every tiny sound it could make. The power was still out, no air conditioning. It was incredibly hot. I wanted to shift so badly, but I was terrified of making even the slightest noise. At that point, the knocks had stopped. But when you live in a quiet, rural area, just about every sound carries. Even though there were no more knocks, we heard footsteps going around our property. Whoever this was didn't just knock and leave. He walked around the house. He knocked on our side and back door. He tapped on our front windows. Then I heard him trying to open our window. What scared me most was just how careful he was. All of our doors and windows make loud squeaking sounds whenever they're opened. Whoever was outside seemed to know that. He was moving slowly, and although he had knocked and whistled, it was like he was trying not to draw attention to himself. I don't know how long all of this went on, but eventually it stopped. My sister and I listened as the footsteps faded away. Then everything went quiet again. I expected my mum to grab her phone and call someone or get up and assess the situation, but what followed wasn't an explanation. It was the sound of gentle snores. Apparently, while all of this was going on, she had just rolled over and gone back to sleep. My sister and I made eye contact and realized we weren't going back to sleep. My sister asked what was going on. This roused my mum from her sleep, and she said it was nothing, probably just the dogs trying to get outside, but that didn't make sense. Our dogs aren't shy about barking, and they must have been asleep in their crates because we never heard them stirring. The next morning, my mum finally admitted what had actually happened. The man she'd been talking to on the phone, the one who asked if she was alone, was the same one who tried to come into our house in the middle of the night. He knew exactly where we lived. He came while the power was out, thinking my mum was alone. My mum told us not to tell my stepfather. She said she would handle it. But her plan, if that man came back? Just tell him she'll report him to the police. In our small town, there aren't many police. Situations are often handled by the parties involved. Who was that guy? Why is my mum chatting with some man who felt so free to come over in the dead of night? Why wouldn't she want us to tell her husband? I can guess the answers to a few of those questions, and they don't paint her in a great light. But without her being honest, I'm just left to guess. And that guess includes whether or not we were in danger that night. She acted like we weren't, but damn, it's hard to accept that at face value. Her plan, if that guy comes back, is absolute trash. But my sister and I don't really have a better idea either. This all happened last night, so it still feels very fresh. Like someone may be figuring out where their plan went wrong initially, and what they can do to succeed next time. It's hard to feel like there won't be a next time right this second.